You and your family will never be more than beggars. Daniel spat, his voice sharp with mockery as Grace froze at the doorway. Your mother sells food on the street. Your brother is chasing dreams that will never happen. And you're just a poor woman pretending to belong in my world. Grace stood still, her chest tight, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She wanted to scream, to defend her family, but the words stuck in her throat. The man she gave everything to, the man she once believed in, had torn her heart with the very weapon she feared most: shame. What Daniel didn't know was that the same family he mocked would one day be the very people he begged to feed him. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful stories like this one. Let's begin. Grace Johnson's heart beat like a drum as she stood in front of the tall hotel mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes wide, hands trembling, lips painted a soft shade of pink. She had dreamed of this day since she was a teenager. A white gown, a hall full of music, and the man she loved waiting at the end of the aisle. The gown she wore was not the most expensive. It didn't sparkle with diamonds or glitter with imported lace like some of the other brides she had seen on Instagram, but it fit her frame perfectly, hugging her slender figure, and the satin veil cascaded down her back like water. It was enough. It was beautiful. Behind her, her mother, Helen Johnson, adjusted the veil carefully with wrinkled fingers. Helen had been up since 4 a.m., cooking a pot of food for the helpers at home before rushing to the hotel to be by her daughter's side. Her eyes shone with tears now as she looked at her only daughter. "My Grace," Helen whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You look like an angel, the most beautiful bride I have ever seen." Grace smiled, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Mama, don't make me cry. My makeup will be ruined." Helen chuckled softly. "Even if you cry, you will still shine. Today is your day. May God bless you and keep you." Grace hugged her mother tightly, inhaling the familiar smell of pepper, onions, and fried oil that always clung to her mother's clothes. That smell had followed her all her life, through her childhood, through school days when classmates teased her that her mother smelled like food, through the night she stayed up helping her mother pack rice and stew for customers. That smell to her was not shame. It was sacrifice. It was love. "I wouldn't be here without you, Mama," Grace whispered into her mother's shoulder. "Everything I am today is because of you." Helen kissed her daughter's cheek. "Go, my child. Step into your new life. Just don't forget where you came from." Grace nodded, her heart swelling with pride and nervousness. The wedding hall was grand. Chandeliers dangling from the ceiling, tables covered in white linen, and golden chairs neatly arranged. Guests murmured in admiration as the music swelled and Grace stepped onto the aisle. Her gown glowed under the lights. At the end of the aisle, Daniel Brown stood tall in his tailored suit. He looked like a man who had never known struggle. His skin glistened, his hair was neatly cut, and his smile was wide as he watched Grace walk toward him. To the crowd, he looked like a proud groom. To Grace, he was a man who had promised to love her forever. The vows were exchanged, rings slid onto fingers, and the pastor declared them husband and wife. When they kissed, the crowd clapped and cheered. Grace felt her heart soar. This was it. Her dream had come true. But dreams, she would soon learn, can carry shadows. At the reception, the hall was filled with laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Daniel's friends and relatives were everywhere, their laughter loud, their perfume strong, their eyes sharp. Grace's family, dressed in their best clothes, sat humbly at a corner table. They didn't have the kind of wealth that dripped from the Browns, but their smiles were genuine, their hearts proud. Grace danced, laughed, and posed for photos, but deep inside she felt the weight of stares. Daniel's cousins whispered behind manicured hands. His aunt raised her eyebrow when she saw Helen's simple lace dress. Later, as Grace sat beside her new husband at the high table, Daniel leaned in. His smile was still plastered across his face of the crowd, but his words were knives. "You looked stunning walking down the aisle," he whispered. Grace's heart fluttered. "Thank you, darling." Daniel's lips curled into a smirk. "But I couldn't stop thinking, your mother. Can you imagine? From selling rice on the roadside to sitting here in a hotel like this. It's almost comical. Grace froze, the fork in her hand trembling. She turned her face to him slowly. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Daniel chuckled under his breath. "Relax. I'm just saying it's funny. Your background, this wedding. The contrast is almost movie." Her throat tightened. "Daniel, don't talk about my mother like that. She's the reason I even made it to university. She worked day and night, too." He cut her off with a casual wave of his hand. "Grace, don't be sensitive. I was just joking. You'll have to get used to my family's way of seeing things. We live differently." Grace forced a smile because people were watching. She looked across the hall at her mother, who was laughing happily with Michael, her younger brother. They were so proud, so unaware. A pang of shame hit her, but then she pushed it down. She told herself, "He doesn't mean it. He loves me. He will learn to respect them." But the seed of pain was planted. Later in the evening, Daniel's cousin Sandra, a sharp-tongued woman who had once dated Daniel, walked past Grace with a glass of wine. She leaned in and whispered with a smirk, "Enjoy this moment, Grace. Not every day does a food seller's daughter marry into Browns." Grace's smile faltered, but she didn't respond. She just held her glass tighter and swallowed her tears. That night in their hotel suite, after the guests were gone, Grace tried to bring it up again. "Daniel," she said softly, "why did you say those things about my mother? Do you really think she's beneath your family?" Daniel was scrolling through his phone. He sighed impatiently. "Grace, don't start. It was a joke. You need to lighten up." "It didn't feel like a joke," she whispered. "Then maybe you're too sensitive," he said coldly. "Don't ruin our first night with this nonsense." Grace turned away, blinking back tears. She lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The happiest day of her life had ended with a bruise on her heart. Weeks passed. Grace tried to bury the painful words. She convinced herself marriage required patience, that Daniel would change. She woke early, made him breakfast, ironed his shirts. She smiled at his friends, even when she felt invisible. But Daniel's subtle digs never stopped. If she mentioned her mother's restaurant, he rolled his eyes. If she sent money to Michael for his projects, Daniel called it a waste. One evening, Daniel invited Grace to a rooftop restaurant with his friends. The city lights sparkled below and soft music played. Grace wore her best black dress and prayed silently, "Please, let tonight be different. Let him be proud of me." At the table were Daniel's colleagues and some old university friends. They talked about cars, vacations in Dubai, and investments. Grace mostly listened, smiling politely. Then Victor, one of Daniel's loudest friends, turned to her. "So, Grace, tell us, what does your family do?" Grace hesitated but lifted her chin. "My mother runs a restaurant. She started as a street food vendor, but now she owns her own place. People love her cooking." Before she could finish, Daniel laughed loudly. "A restaurant?" he said, shaking his head. "Come on, Grace. Don't exaggerate. It's a small roadside joint, not some big restaurant." The table burst into laughter. Grace's cheeks burned. "It's not a roadside joint. It's—" Daniel cut her off. "Guys, you should have seen it. The first time I visited her home, I nearly laughed. Her mom was stirring rice in smoky pots, selling to taxi drivers and laborers. I almost thought I'd stepped into the past." Laughter roared around the table. Grace's throat tightened. She forced a small smile. "There's nothing wrong with honest work. My mother worked hard to raise us." Sandra, Daniel's ex, smirked. "Wow. From smoky pots to champagne glasses. Grace, you really climbed, didn't you?" The others chuckled. Daniel raised his glass. "Let's just say I upgraded her life. From smoky kitchens to this rooftop view." Everyone clapped and cheered. Grace's eyes blurred with tears, but she held them back. She smiled weakly, hiding the storm in her chest. At home that night, Grace couldn't hold it anymore. "Why, Daniel?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you humiliate me like that in front of your friends?" Daniel loosened his tie. "Oh, come on. They were just jokes. Don't be dramatic." They were not jokes, she cried. You mocked my mother. You mocked me. She is the reason I even went to school. Do you know how many nights she slept hungry just to feed us? Do you know the sacrifices she made? Daniel's expression hardened. Grace, listen to yourself. My world is different. My friends don't understand that kind of life. And honestly, neither do I. If you want to fit in, stop dragging your family into everything. Grace's lips trembled. I am not ashamed of my family. Well, you should be, Daniel snapped, because they embarrass me. The words cut her deeper than a knife. Tears spilled from her eyes as she whispered, One day, Daniel, one day, you will regret saying that. Daniel smirked. We'll see. Grace turned to the window, her heart heavy with pain. The city lights twinkled outside, but in her chest, darkness grew. The weeks turned into months. Grace woke up each day hoping Daniel would change, but each day left her more disappointed. At first, she tried to ignore his remarks. Whenever he sneered about her mother's smoky food pots or rolled his eyes when she sent money to Michael, she told herself, patience, grace. Marriage isn't easy. Maybe he'll learn to appreciate them one day. But his words grew sharper, his tone colder. One Saturday morning, Grace prepared a simple breakfast of yam and fried eggs. Daniel sat at the dining table scrolling through his phone, his cup of coffee steaming beside him. She placed his plate gently in front of him. Here you go, love. He looked at it and scoffed. Grace, do you have to cook like your mother? Yam and eggs? Can't you try something more refined? You're a Brown now, not a Johnson anymore. Grace's lips pressed together. Daniel, food is food. And besides, you loved this when we were dating. That was before. Now I expect more. He stabbed the yam with his fork, shaking his head. You really can't leave your mother's ways behind, can you? Grace swallowed her pain. My mother taught me everything I know. I'm proud of that. Daniel chuckled coldly. Well, I'm not. Later that day, Grace visited her mother's restaurant. It was small but lively. The smell of spicy jollof rice and fried chicken filled the air, and customers crowded the wooden tables, laughing and eating. Helen moved quickly behind the counter, dishing food with practiced hands, while Michael sat in a corner with his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys. When Grace entered, her mother's face lit up. My daughter, you look tired. Sit, let me get you some food. Grace forced a smile and hugged her. I'm fine, Mama. Just a little stress. Helen studied her carefully. Is Daniel treating you well? Grace hesitated. She didn't want to worry her mother, so she nodded. Yes, Mama. Don't worry. But Michael looked up from his laptop. He was only 22, but his eyes were sharp. Grace, I can see it. He doesn't respect you, does he? Grace sat down heavily. Michael, please. Not today. Michael closed his laptop and leaned forward. You've always protected us. You paid my school fees. You helped Mama with the business. You worked so hard. Don't let it make you feel small. You deserve better. Grace's eyes stung with tears, but she forced a smile. I'll be fine. I just need to focus on supporting you both. That's all that matters. Her brother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. One day, sis, I'll make you proud. My app will change everything for us. Grace smiled weakly. I know it will, Michael. I believe in you. But Daniel did not believe in him. One evening, when Grace told Daniel about Michael's tech project, he laughed mockingly. Grace, your brother is wasting his time. Apps? In this country? Please. He should just join your mother and sell rice. That's all your family is good at. Grace's blood boiled. Don't talk about him like that. He's brilliant, Daniel. You'll see one day. Daniel smirked. I doubt it. Grace turned away, hiding her tears. She was caught between two worlds, one where love was supposed to protect her, and another where the man she loved was slowly breaking her spirit. The breaking point came sooner than Grace expected. One evening, Daniel came home late, smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual brand. Grace had been waiting for him, dinner cold on the table. Where were you? She asked softly. Daniel loosened his tie and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Out. With who? He shrugged. Friends. Grace's chest tightened. She could feel something was wrong. Daniel, don't lie to me. Were you with Sandra? Daniel smirked, not even trying to hide it. And what if I was? Grace's lips trembled. You promised me you were done with her. You said. She understands me, Daniel interrupted coldly. She comes from my world. She doesn't drag me down with stories about smoky food pots and poor brothers who think they're geniuses. Grace's knees went weak. So you're cheating on me? Daniel sipped his drink, his eyes cold. Call it whatever you want. But let's be honest, Grace. You don't fit here. You never did. You and your family will always remain poor, begging from people like me. The words hit her like a slap. She staggered back, her chest burning with pain. Tears rolled down her face. How could you say that to me? After everything I've done for you, after all the love I gave you? Daniel shrugged, setting his glass down. Love doesn't erase reality. You married up, Grace. Be grateful. Grace's voice broke. No, Daniel. I didn't marry up. I married down because I chose a man with no respect. For the first time, she saw him clearly, not as a charming man she had fallen in love with, but as someone who had never valued her family. Her heart shattered, but her spirit hardened. She picked up her bag and whispered, You will regret this, Daniel. You will regret every word. Daniel laughed coldly. We'll see about that. Grace walked out of the house that night, her tears falling freely. She had nothing but her broken heart. Yet in that moment, she also carried something Daniel didn't. The fire of dignity and the quiet strength of a woman who would one day rise. Grace sat in her mother's small restaurant the morning after leaving Daniel. Her eyes were swollen from crying all night, but her spirit was sharper than it had ever been. The chairs around the restaurant were filled with customers enjoying plates of steaming rice, fried plantain, and grilled chicken. The smell of spices filled the air, mixing with the chatter of hungry workers who had stopped by on their way to the office. Mama Helen noticed her daughter's pale face and sat beside her. Grace, tell me the truth. Did Daniel hit you? Grace shook her head slowly. No, Mama, he didn't touch me. But his words, they cut deeper than any slap. Michael leaned against the counter, closing his laptop. He had overheard everything. Sis, I told you, that man never respected you. But don't worry, he'll see soon enough. Grace looked at him, her lips trembling. Michael, how will he see? He has money, power, friends. And us? We're just ordinary. Michael's eyes shone with quiet fire. We're not ordinary. We just haven't been discovered yet. My app is ready, Grace. I just need someone to believe in me. Grace smiled faintly. Tell me about it again. Michael opened his laptop, the screen glowing with codes and colorful icons. It's called Food Connect, an app where people can order homemade meals, not just from big restaurants, but from small businesses like Mama's. Imagine Mama's jollof rice delivered to offices across the city. Imagine workers ordering a goosey soup or fried fish with just a click. Grace blinked. The idea sounded powerful. Mama's food has always been loved, Grace whispered. But it only reaches people who can come here. With this, it could reach everywhere. Michael nodded eagerly. Exactly. It won't just be Mama. Other small cooks can join too. We'll change the food industry. Helen, who had been listening quietly, chuckled. Me? On phone app? You children want to turn my pepper rice into technology? Grace laughed for the first time in days. The sound light and healing. Yes, Mama. And it will work. A week later, Grace used her savings to print flyers for Michael's idea. She helped him approach small businesses, convincing them to list their meals on Food Connect. At first, many people laughed at them. Some mocked. Who will order food from an app when street vendors are everywhere? But slowly, curious people downloaded it. Orders began to trickle in. One afternoon, as Grace and Michael were packaging meals for delivery, a tall man in an expensive suit walked into the restaurant. He carried himself with quiet authority, his driver waiting outside by a sleek black car. He introduced himself as Mr. Williams, a billionaire investor known for spotting rising businesses. I came across your app, he said in a deep voice. I ordered food yesterday. The delivery was fast. The taste was excellent. Who is behind this? Michael's eyes widened. I built the app, sir. Mr. Williams studied him for a moment, then looked at Grace. And you? I help run the operations, she said shyly. The recipes are my mother's. The billionaire smiled. Impressive. You may be small now, but this has potential to dominate the market. Grace's heart raced. Do you really think so? I don't think so, Mr. Williams replied calmly. I know so. I want to invest in your company. The room went silent. Mama Helen dropped the spoon in her hand. Invest? In our pepper rice? Mr. Williams chuckled. Yes, Mama, in your pepper rice and in the vision behind it. That day marked the beginning of their transformation. The partnership with Mr. Williams changed everything. He provided funding, mentorship, and access to networks Grace and Michael never dreamed of. With his help, Food Connect expanded from a small app to a full company. Delivery bikes branded with the logo zipped across the city. Billboards went up showing smiling families enjoying Mama Helen's kitchen. Influencers posted videos eating her jollof, praising its authenticity. Within months, they opened their first official branch, a modern restaurant in the city center with glass doors, air conditioning, and professional chefs trained by Helen herself. Grace stood in the restaurant one evening, watching customers flood in. She remembered the humiliation at Daniel's rooftop dinner, the way his friends had laughed. Her chest swelled with pride. Michael walked up to her, grinning. Look around, sis. This is just the beginning. Grace hugged him tightly. You did it, Michael. You made your dream real. No, Michael said. We did it. Mama, you and me were a team. Meanwhile, news outlets began to cover their story. Headlines read, From street food to tech empire, the Johnson family's rise. Mama Helen's kitchen, the taste that took over the city. People who once mocked them now lined up to taste their food. Grace's phone buzzed with messages from former classmates, colleagues, even distant relatives, all praising her family's success. But the sweetest moment came one night when Grace scrolled through social media and saw a trending video. It was Sandra, the same woman who had mocked her at dinner, sitting in Mama Helen's kitchen, recording herself eating. This food is divine. Sandra said on camera, licking her fingers. No wonder everyone is talking about it. If you haven't tried Mama Helen's kitchen, you're missing out. Grace watched the video, her lips curling into a soft smile. Life had come full circle. One evening, Grace sat with her mother in their new office. The walls were decorated with awards and photos of smiling customers. Mama, Grace whispered, do you remember the day Daniel said we would always be poor, begging from people like him? Helen nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I remember. And now look at us. They mocked us, but today we feed them. Grace smiled, her heart lighter than it had ever been. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Daniel had always been proud of his image. He walked like a king, spoke with arrogance, and carried himself like he owned the world. But as the months passed, life started to teach him painful lessons. It began with whispers in his office. One of his colleagues had discovered irregularities in the company's accounts. Funds were missing, deals were collapsing, and Daniel's name was mentioned more than once. One morning, his boss, Mr. Carter, called him into the office. Daniel, Mr. Carter said, his face stern, we have a serious problem. Some of our clients are complaining about mismanaged funds. Do you know anything about this? Daniel forced a smile. Sir, I don't know what they're talking about. You know I've always handled things professionally. Mr. Carter shook his head. I want to believe you, but there are documents with your signature and transfers to accounts that don't look right. Daniel's heart raced. He had made a few selfish moves with company money, thinking nobody would notice. He thought he was too smart to get caught. But now, it was catching up with him. Sir, I can explain, Daniel stammered. There will be time to explain, Mr. Carter replied coldly. But not in this company. You're suspended, effective immediately. Daniel's jaw dropped. Suspended? Just like that? After all I've done for this company? Mr. Carter sighed. Daniel, you brought this on yourself. Hand in your ID card and leave the premises. Daniel's pride was shattered. He stormed out, his head spinning. Things only got worse from there. Sandra, the woman he had cheated with, had been enjoying the wealth and luxury Daniel provided. But once he lost his job, she changed completely. One night, Daniel sat in their apartment, scrolling through job sites on his phone, his face pale with worry. Sandra walked in, wearing a tight dress, her makeup heavy. Daniel, she said, are you still on that couch? You've been like this for weeks. Daniel looked up. Sandra, you don't understand. I've been applying everywhere, but nobody wants to hire me. They all heard about what happened. Sandra rolled her eyes. That's not my problem. I didn't sign up to live with a broke man. You promised me a good life. Look at me. Do I look like someone who should suffer? Daniel clenched his fist. Sandra, I just need time. Things will get better. Sandra laughed bitterly. Better? You don't even have money for rent next month. You don't even have money to take me out anymore. Daniel, you're finished. His chest tightened. Sandra, please don't say that. I'm still the man you fell in love with. Sandra sneered. No, you're not. The man I fell in love with had money. You're useless now. And with that, she grabbed her purse and walked out. The next day, she moved out completely. Daniel sat on the floor of the empty apartment, staring at the bare walls. Tears burned his eyes. He had mocked Grace for being poor. He had insulted her family for struggling. Now here he was, alone, broke, and abandoned. His phone buzzed with messages from debt collectors. He ignored them, covering his face with his hands. How did my life come to this? He whispered to himself. Meanwhile, everywhere Daniel turned, he saw Grace and her family. Their faces were on billboards, their company was in the news, and people spoke highly of them. Mama Helen's Kitchen. The headlines read, from street food to nationwide success. Daniel would switch off the TV angrily, but deep inside, he knew the truth. The family he mocked was rising higher and higher, while he was sinking lower and lower. It was a hot afternoon. Daniel's clothes were wrinkled, and his shoes were worn out. He hadn't eaten all day. Hunger twisted his stomach. As he walked down the busy street, he noticed a crowd gathered in front of a bright, modern restaurant. The sign above it read, Mama Helen's Kitchen. Daniel froze. His mouth went dry. He had heard the name many times on the news, but standing in front of it made his heart pound. The place was beautiful. Large glass windows, elegant decor, and a sweet smell of food drifting out. People walked in and out happily, carrying takeout bags. His stomach growled. He had no money, but the hunger pushed him forward. He swallowed his pride and stepped inside. The restaurant was buzzing with life. Smiling waiters moved quickly, the scent of jollof rice and grilled chicken filling the air. Daniel's knees felt weak. He approached the counter slowly. Excuse me, how much is a small plate of rice? He asked, his voice low. The cashier looked at him. Sir, it's 1,500 Nigerian nairas. Daniel lowered his eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out crumpled notes. All he had was 700 Nigerian nairas. His heart sank. I don't have enough, he whispered. Just then, a familiar voice called out, Daniel. He turned sharply. His eyes widened. Standing before him, elegant in a tailored suit, was Grace. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Grace, he stuttered. Grace's eyes narrowed as she studied him. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. His hair was rough, his clothes dirty, his face full of shame. Daniel, she said calmly, what are you doing here? He swallowed hard. I was hungry. I didn't know this place was yours. Grace's lips curved in a sad smile. Yes, this is Mama Helen's Kitchen, my family's business. Daniel's heart shattered. He looked around, realizing that the very place he had mocked, the family's humble food, had now become a brand feeding the entire city. Grace, please. I didn't mean for things to turn out like this, he whispered, his voice trembling. I was wrong. I shouldn't have mocked you. I shouldn't have mocked your family. Please forgive me. Grace stood tall, her eyes steady. Daniel, do you remember what you once told me? You said my family would always remain poor. You said we would always beg from people like you. Daniel's lips trembled. Grace, I was foolish. I regret it. Please, don't look at me this way. Before Grace could reply, Michael walked over carrying a tray of steaming food. He placed it gently in front of Daniel. Here, Michael said firmly. Eat. Daniel looked at the plate in disbelief. Tears filled his eyes. Grace leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but cutting. The family you mocked now feeds you. Daniel lowered his head, ashamed beyond words. He picked up the spoon with trembling hands. Each bite of food tasted like both heaven and punishment. Around him, people continued to eat and laugh, unaware of the storm raging in his heart. Grace turned away, her face calm. She had found her closure. Daniel, on the other hand, had found his humiliation. Weeks passed after that incident. Daniel tried several times to reach Grace, sending her messages and even waiting outside her office. But Grace never allowed him back into her life. She wasn't bitter anymore. She was simply done. One morning, Mama Helen stood in front of a tall glass building. A huge ribbon was tied across the entrance. The sign above it read, Mama Helen's Kitchen, Global Headquarters. Grace stood beside her mother, looking elegant in a navy blue dress. Michael was on her other side, holding a microphone. Reporters, cameras, and city officials gathered around, eager to witness the grand opening. Mama Helen, dressed in a flowing African print gown, smiled as tears glistened in her eyes. I never thought the woman who once sold food by the roadside would one day stand here. God has been faithful. The crowd clapped. Michael spoke next. This is more than just a company. It is a dream that started with my mother's cooking pot and my sister's faith. Today, we dedicate this building to every African family that has ever been mocked or looked down upon. Your story is not over. Grace stepped forward, her voice calm and powerful. This journey has taught me that no matter how people look down on you, what truly matters is that you don't look down on yourself. To those who mocked us, we say thank you, because you pushed us to rise higher. The crowd cheered. Mama Helen cut the ribbon, and the building was officially opened. Music played, cameras flashed, and people celebrated the Johnson success. Far away in the crowd, Daniel stood in the shadows. He had cleaned up a little, but he still looked nothing like the man he used to be. He watched Grace speak with so much pride and strength. A tear rolled down his cheek, not from anger, but from regret. Grace noticed him, but didn't look twice. She had already forgiven him in her heart, but she knew he no longer had a place in her life. As the ceremony ended, Grace lifted her head to the sky. She felt peace. She wasn't the broken girl Daniel had mocked. She was now a woman of strength, dignity, and purpose. Mama Helen placed her arm around her daughter. You've made me proud, Grace. No, Mama, Grace whispered, smiling. We did it together. The Johnson family stood tall that day, not as the poor family people once mocked, but as a symbol of resilience and victory. And Daniel, he walked away, knowing that karma had spoken loudly. The family he mocked now fed him. The end. And so, the man who once mocked Grace's family, who called them beggars and laughed at their struggles, now eats from their table, humbled by the same destiny he tried to destroy. Life has a way of turning tables. Never look down on anyone, because the stone you kick today might be the same one you lean on tomorrow. Backhand index pointing right, what do you think? Did Daniel deserve this ending, or should Grace have shown him more mercy? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.